Conformity is the silent killer of individuality every day. Society whispers rules in your ear, shaping how you think, act, and even dream. But what if the real rebellion isn't shouting in the streets, but the quiet defiance of living by your own principles? 2,000 years ago, the Stoics mastered this art of inner resistance. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. That's the heart of Stoicism, not blind rejection of society, but the courage to align your life with nature, not popular opinion. Today, we're tearing up the script society handed you. You'll discover how Stoic wisdom can sharpen why our Chinese letter armor you against external pressures and turn you into an unshakable force of one. This isn't just philosophy, it's a toolkit for reclaiming your mind. Why do we spend so much energy trying to please strangers, chasing applause from a crowd that doesn't even know us? The truth is, most of what we call success or fitting in is just borrowed approval, and the Stoics saw right through this illusion 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, drew a line in the sand. Some things are within our power while others are not. Your opinions, your choices, your effort, those belong to you. But the reactions of others, the ever-shifting standards of society, those are as reliable as the weather. Here's the revolutionary part: conformity crumbles when you stop mistaking outside noise for your inner compass. Epictetus compared life to a play. You don't control the script, the audience, or the reviews. Your only job to deliver your role with integrity. Imagine spending less energy on curating your image and more on refining your character. What would you stop pretending to enjoy? Whose judgment would you finally stop fearing? This isn't about ignoring the world, it's about reclaiming your focus. Every time you obsess over likes, promotions, or trends, ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, redirect that energy inward. The less you need validation, the more room you create for something far more powerful: self-possession. History gives us plenty of rebels, loud, fiery figures who break rules for the sake of breaking them. But the Stoics, they were a different kind of revolutionary. Take Cotto the Younger, a man who wore his principles like armor. When Rome's elites were lost in corruption, he refused to play their game, not with grand speeches or theatrics, but with quiet, relentless consistency. He didn't rebel for applause, he resisted because it was right. That's the Stoic difference. Defiance isn't about performance. It's about alignment between what you believe and how you act, no matter the cost. Superficial rebellion shouts, "Look at me." Stoic defiance whispers, "This is me." Seneca put it bluntly: what's the point of dragging another's eyes along the path you walk? You have to live for yourself. Think about the last time you bit your tongue to keep the peace, nodded along to something you disagreed with, or changed your stance because it was easier. Conformity isn't just following the crowd, it's letting the crowd write your script. Real revolution doesn't start with banners or slogans. It starts in the quiet moments, when you choose honesty over convenience, when you refuse to laugh at a cruel joke just to fit in, when you stand by your values even if it means standing alone. That's where the Stoic rebel is forged. So here's a question to sit with. Where have you been trading pieces of yourself for acceptance? And what would it look like to stop? This isn't about burning bridges. It's about building something unshakable inside, a self that doesn't bend to every wind of opinion. Because when you stop outsourcing your worth, you realize the most powerful rebellion isn't against the world. It's for yourself. Most of us never realize we're holding beliefs we didn't even choose. They were handed to us, absorbed from culture, family, or the relentless hum of collective opinion. The Stoics called this out centuries ago, practicing something modern psychologists now call cognitive distancing, the ability to step back and ask, do I actually believe this, or was I just trained to? Marcus Aurelius did this daily in his journals, dissecting assumptions like a scientist examining a specimen. Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, he wrote. His private pages weren't filled with affirmations, but with challenges interrogating every norm, every expectation. Here's why this matters today. We swim in an ocean of unchallenged ideas. Social media algorithms feed us recycled opinions, workplaces reward groupthink, and even our hobbies often become performative, chosen more for how they look than how they feel. The Stoic remedy: detachment not from reality but from blind absorption. Imagine treating beliefs like clothing, trying them on, checking the fit, discarding what doesn't serve you. When Marcus questioned Rome's obsession with fame, he wasn't rejecting ambition, he was refusing to let it define him. Modern life gives us endless opportunities to practice this. A social media detox isn't just about screen time. It's a rebellion against letting an algorithm curate your values. Walking away from a debate isn't weakness, it's the strength to refuse engagement with ideas that drain you. The goal isn't to dismiss every tradition, but to choose your convictions deliberately. So here's a challenge. Pick one belief you've always accepted about success, relationships, even happiness, and ask, is this truly mine or did I inherit it? The answers might surprise you, because here's the paradox: the more you distance yourself from borrowed thoughts, the closer you get to something real. The Stoics didn't want empty contrarians, they wanted awake minds, and in a world addicted to hot takes and reactive outrage, that's the quietest, most radical act of all. The modern world bombards us with artificial scarcity, convincing us we need the newest phone, the trendiest wardrobe, the relentless upgrade cycle just to feel complete. But the Stoics saw this trap coming 2 millennia ago. They developed a radical countermeasure, the discipline of desire. While today's consumer culture whispers, "You'll be happy when," Epictetus cut through the noise with a razor's edge. Freedom isn't secured by fulfilling desires, but by destroying them. He wasn't advocating austerity for its own sake. This was about sovereignty, recognizing how easily we chain ourselves to things we never truly needed. Think about the last time you scrolled through social media and felt that itch, the sudden urge to buy, chase, or compare. That's not organic desire, it's engineered craving. The Stoics distinguished between natural needs, food, shelter, connection, and inflamed wants, status symbols, viral trends, the dopamine hit of new. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, famously carried nothing but a walking stick and a cloak. When a shipwreck left him penniless in Athens, he turned disaster into liberation, realizing how little he actually required to thrive. Here's where we reclaim agency. Start small. Pick one area where your wants might not be entirely your own. Is it fashion, tech gadgets, even something subtle like the pressure to vacation in Instagram-worthy locations rather than places that truly nourish you? Trace that desire back. Ask, does this align with my nature, or did it come from a billboard, an influencer, a fear of falling behind? The aim isn't to judge yourself, but to notice, because awareness is the first fracture in the illusion. Consumer culture thrives on a lie. That happiness sits just past the next purchase. But the Stoics measured richness differently, by what you could walk away from without crumbling. That's the silent power of disciplined desire. When external validation loses its grip, you're left with something far more sustaining, an inner compass that points true north, regardless of the cultural weather. So next time you feel that pull toward something shiny, pause. Ask not just, do I want this, but why? The answer might surprise you. There's a quiet revolution hidden in 2 simple Latin words: Amor Fati, love of fate. At first glance, it sounds passive, even defeatist, but dig deeper, and you'll find one of the most radical acts of defiance possible. refusing to see yourself as a victim of circumstance. Nietzsche, who admired the Stoics, called this the formula for human greatness, not mere acceptance celebration, not why me, but try me. Think about the last time life blindsided you, a job loss, a breakup, an unexpected setback. Society teaches us to frame these moments as injustices, to wear our struggles like badges of victimhood. But the Stoics flipped the script. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire amid wars and plagues, wrote, "The obstacle is the way." Not a platitude, but a battle cry. Every challenge, every unfair twist is raw material for forging something unbreakable. Modern psychology backs this up with the concept of antifragility, the idea that some systems don't just endure stress, they thrive on it. Muscles grow through resistance, forests need wildfires to regenerate, and your character sharpens when you stop resisting reality and start leveraging it. That missed promotion, a chance to build skills no one can ignore, that heartbreak, space to rediscover what you truly value. Here's the rebellious part. Amor Fati isn't about gritting your teeth through hardship. It's about actively choosing to find the hidden edge in every situation. Seneca, exiled to a barren island, didn't wallow. He wrote some of his greatest letters there. Epictetus, crippled by a cruel master, declared, "Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will." These men weren't optimists, they were alchemists, turning adversity into fuel. So here's a question to carry with you today. What current difficulty have you been resisting that could instead become your training ground? Maybe it's a draining job that's teaching you patience, or a strained relationship revealing your boundaries. The moment you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can this reveal about me?" that's when conformity to victimhood ends and real growth begins. Because the world will always offer you a script to complain, to compare, to crumble. Amor Fati tears up that script and hands you a pen. The plot twists aren't your enemies, they're your co-authors. And the story they're helping you write, far more interesting than comfort ever could be. We all carry invisible weights, the fear of being judged, the pressure to perform, the nagging sense that everyone else has life figured out while we're stumbling in the dark. What if there was a way to dissolve that anxiety with a single shift in perspective? The Stoics perfected an exercise they called the view from above, a mental telescope that zooms out until your worries shrink to their true size. Picture this: you're standing on a cliff watching ants scurry below. From this height, their frantic movements seem almost comical, each one convinced their tiny burdens matter to the universe. Now pull back further. See your city as a speck on the globe, your country a brushstroke on the planet's surface. Suddenly, that rude comment from a coworker or the sideways glance from a stranger doesn't just feel smaller, it is smaller. Marcus Aurelius trained himself this way, writing, "Think of the whole of existence in which you play an insignificant part, not to diminish you but to liberate you." The modern twist: use this when social anxiety strikes. Next time you're paralyzed by what others might think, pause. Imagine the room from the ceiling, then the building from the sky, then the continent from space. Watch how quickly "what will they say" becomes "why did I ever care?" This isn't about nihilism, it's about proportion. That presentation you're dreading, in a century no one will remember it. The outfit you stressed over, a blink in time's eye. Marcus hammered this home: the longest life and the shortest come to the same end. Mortality isn't morbid here, it's clarifying. When you grasp how few dawns you actually get, conforming to others' expectations starts to look like the real waste. The view from above isn't just an exercise, it's armor against the petty tyrannies of social approval. So tonight, step outside, look up, let the stars remind you, most of what we fear doesn't even register in the cosmos. And that's the most freeing realization of all. Here's the next section of your script. Notice how the most confident people in any room aren't the loudest, they're often the ones who have already made peace with worst-case scenarios. The Stoics had a brutal yet liberating practice for this called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It wasn't about pessimism, it was about vaccination. By mentally rehearsing life's sharpest blows, rejection, failure, even exile, they stripped those fears of their teeth. Seneca tested this firsthand. When Emperor Claudius banished him to Corsica, a death sentence for most Romans, he responded with eerie calm. Why? He'd already lived through it in his mind 1,000 times. His letters reveal the secret. What is quite unlooked for is more crushing. Rehearse them in your mind. Exile, torture, war, shipwreck. Fast forward to today, that knot in your stomach before speaking up in a meeting, the dread of posting an unpopular opinion online. It's not the criticism itself that paralyzes you, it's the uncertainty. Premeditatio malorum flips the script. Picture the worst reaction you fear: mockery, silence, dismissal. Then visualize yourself breathing through it. Actors do this before auditions. CEOs do it before high-stakes pitches. It's not about expecting failure, it's about neutralizing its power to control you. Try this now. Name one fear that's been whispering, "What if they reject me?" Maybe it's pitching a radical idea at work, wearing something that breaks norms, or finally setting that unpopular boundary. Now, imagine the scenario in vivid detail: the raised eyebrows, the awkward silence, the cold email rejection. Feel it, then ask, could I survive this? Spoiler, you could. And once you know that, conformity loses its grip, because here's the paradox Seneca discovered. When you stop running from imagined disasters, you stop giving strangers veto power over your life. The critics might still come, but their words, they'll land like rain on armor, loud but no longer piercing. There's a fortress inside you, an unconquerable stronghold no critic can breach, no algorithm can manipulate, and no outside opinion can shake. Marcus Aurelius called it the Inner Citadel, and he didn't just write about it, he lived it. While ruling an empire teetering on the edge of war and plague, he carved out moments each morning to whisper to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That wasn't just poetic musing, it was a survival tactic. Fast forward to today, where we've traded inner fortresses for external scoreboards, likes, promotions, followers, all flashing neon signs that scream, "Do they approve?" The modern world conditions us to seek refuge in everyone's mind except our own. But here's the Stoic truth: validation addiction isn't just exhausting, it's a form of self-betrayal. Every time you refresh your screen hoping for applause, you're handing strangers the keys to your peace. Building your inner citadel starts with a simple but radical habit: daily interrogation of your dependencies. Before bed, Marcus would dissect his day with surgical precision. What did I crave today that wasn't mine to control? Where did I give away my sovereignty? This wasn't self-criticism, it was recalibration. Try it tonight. Scan your interactions. Notice when you softened an opinion to avoid debate, or when your mood swung because someone didn't text back. Those are the cracks in your walls. The remedy: small but deliberate acts of non-compliance. Wear the outfit that feels true but won't impress. Share the idea that resonates with you but isn't trending. Delete an app that turns your attention into a slot machine. Each time you choose integrity over approval, you add another brick to your citadel. Marcus left us an open invitation: retreat into yourself. No one is safer than the person who's at home in their own mind. So here's the challenge: what's one external validation you've been treating as oxygen when it's really just decoration? The moment you stop needing it to breathe is the moment you realize you were never the prisoner, you were always the fortress. Most people couldn't pick Musonius Rufus out of a lineup, and that's exactly why he matters. While today's influencers chase viral fame and brand deals, This first-century Stoic was busy dismantling societal hierarchies in ways that still sting with relevance. Born into Rome's elite, he rejected comfort to teach philosophy in exile voluntarily. His classroom a dirt floor, his students women, slaves, anyone society deemed unworthy. When authorities mocked him for teaching manual laborers, he shot back. You think they need philosophy less because they work with their hands, their souls need it more. Imagine saying that in an age when wisdom was supposed to be a luxury good for the privileged. Now scroll through today's thought leader feeds. How much of their content is actually about building character versus building personal brands? We've confused visibility with virtue, mistaking follower counts for wisdom. But here's the Stoic litmus test. Would this person's advice hold up if they were unknown? Musonius didn't need a blue checkmark to prove his worth. He proved it by living what he taught, even when no one was applauding. This isn't about dismissing modern voices. It's about auditing who gets space in your mind. Take a moment to list the people you genuinely admire, not for their accolades or aesthetics, but for their unshakable core. Maybe it's the coworker who stays calm under fire, the grandmother who radiates quiet resilience, or the historical figure who stood alone for principle. Contrast that with traits society worships: charm over integrity, confidence over competence, controversy over kindness. Spot the mismatch, that's your compass. Musonius offered a radical filter for choosing mentors. Trust those whose actions align with their words and whose words align with nature. Translation: follow the ones who walk the talk even when the path is unpaved. So here's your challenge tonight. Prune your mental Rolodex. Keep those who embody the virtues you want to grow. Archive the rest, because the quiet teacher in a dusty toga knew something we've forgotten. True influence isn't measured in engagement metrics. It's measured in lives changed when no one's watching. There's a strange magic in closing your eyes and picturing life without the things you take for granted. Your health, your home, even the device you're watching this on. The Stoics didn't just stumble upon this idea, they weaponized it. They called it negative visualization, and it wasn't about pessimism, it was about inoculation. By mentally rehearsing loss, they vaccinated themselves against two modern plagues, FOMO and status anxiety. Seneca, who could have lived in decadence as Nero's tutor, regularly practiced poverty, sleeping on hard floors, wearing threadbare clothes not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Set aside a certain number of days to eat only the cheapest food, wear the roughest clothing, he advised. His reasoning was razor sharp. You'll understand that a person's peace of mind doesn't depend on what they lack, but on how they relate to what they have. Now fast forward to today's digital circus, where ads scream, upgrade now, and influencers peddle lifestyles just out of reach. Negative visualization flips that script. Try this. Next time you feel that itch to scroll or splurge, pause. Picture your Wi-Fi vanishing for a month. Visualize your bank account resetting to zero. Sit with the discomfort, then notice how your breathing slows, how your grip on needing that thing loosens. This isn't about rejecting modern comforts, it's about seeing them clearly, undistorted by manufactured desire. Digital minimalism is the modern echo of this practice. Think of it as reverse engineering your dependencies. When you delete social apps not temporarily, but consciously imagining life if they disappeared forever, something shifts. You start to notice the subtle ways these platforms hijack your attention span, your self-worth. The goal isn't austerity, it's awakening. Every time you resist checking notifications reflexively, you're rebuilding a muscle the Stoics prized above all: choice. Here's your challenge. Pick one so-called luxury you've conflated with necessity. Your morning latte, your Netflix subscription, even your smartphone's constant presence. For the next week, practice intermittently going without it, not as punishment but as research. Notice the stories your mind spins. I can't focus without background noise, or people will think I'm falling behind. Then recall Seneca's insight. He who adapts himself to poverty least fears it. Because here's the secret no algorithm wants you to know. Real security doesn't come from accumulating more cushions against life's bumps. It comes from knowing you could land hard and still be unbroken. Consider this staggering truth. The average person will spend nearly 5 years of their life on social media, yet constantly complain they don't have time. Seneca saw this coming 2,000 years ago when he wrote on the shortness of life, a blistering takedown of society's greatest con. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful. His words weren't just observation, they were a rallying cry against the busyness trap. Here's the revolutionary twist: Stoic time management isn't about productivity hacks or color-coded calendars. It's about treating your hours like sovereign territory and expelling the colonizers. Every mindless scroll session, every meeting that could have been an email, every obligation you accept just to avoid awkwardness. Those aren't neutral choices, they're silent surrenders to cultural expectations. Seneca called out the ultimate irony. You act like mortals in all you fear and like immortals in all you desire. We waste days chasing trivialities because we've been conditioned to confuse motion with meaning. Modern society rewards performative busyness, answering emails at midnight to signal dedication, packing calendars to appear important. The Stoics proposed a radical alternative: value clarity. Before agreeing to any commitment, ask, does this align with my core aims, or am I doing it to maintain an image? Marcus Aurelius carved time for philosophy amid ruling an empire by ruthlessly cutting empty rituals. No small talk, no status games, just purposeful action. Your turn: conduct a time audit with Stoic precision. Pick one recurring slot in your week, maybe the hour lost to newsfeed rabbit holes or the weekly networking event you dread. Now apply Seneca's litmus test. If this activity vanished tomorrow, would my life lose depth or just the illusion of relevance? The gap between those answers is where your rebellion begins. Because reclaiming time isn't selfish, it's the ultimate act of defiance against a world that profits from your distraction. The clock isn't just ticking, it's counting down. But here's the good news: unlike money, you can't lose time. You can only give it away, and every moment you stop handing over to conformity is a revolution in miniature. Here's your next section. We like to believe more options mean more freedom, endless restaurants to pick from, countless careers to chase, infinite content to consume. But somewhere between scrolling through 200 identical toothpaste brands and agonizing over 30 nearly identical streaming shows, a strange truth emerges. Choice doesn't liberate us, it paralyzes us. The Stoics uncovered this paradox centuries before it became a psychological buzzword. Epictetus, who taught philosophy in a cramped Athenian classroom, sliced through the illusion with one razor-sharp line. Freedom isn't achieved through satisfying desires, but by eliminating them. He wasn't advocating for scarcity. He was pointing to a radical truth. Real agency comes not from accumulating options, but from ruthlessly filtering them. Modern science calls this decision fatigue, the mental drain of constantly choosing between trivial alternatives, leaving us exhausted when real priorities demand attention. Think about your average morning. You expend willpower picking an outfit, debating breakfast, selecting a podcast, all before tackling anything meaningful. By the time you face a critical career move or creative project, your mental reserves are already depleted by the tyranny of tiny choices, the Stoic antidote. Voluntary constraints. Steve Jobs famously wore the same black turtleneck daily, not because he lacked style, but because it freed up cognitive space for decisions that actually mattered. Marcus Aurelius structured his days around a handful of non-negotiables: journaling, exercise, deep work, not as a rigid routine, but as a liberation tactic. Here's where we reclaim sovereignty. Start small. Identify one area where endless options are diluting your focus. Maybe it's the 20 tabs open for research that morph into hours of distraction. Or the flexible schedule that somehow fills with trivial tasks. Now apply Epictetus's filter. Does this option serve my core aims, or is it just noise dressed as opportunity? Limit your menu not to deprive yourself, but to redirect energy toward what nourishes you. The entrepreneur who stops chasing every trend can finally build something lasting. The artist who ignores fleeting styles discovers their authentic voice. This isn't about minimalism for aesthetics, it's about clarity for survival. In a world that confuses abundance with prosperity, the real rebels are those who dare to say enough. Because when you stop letting trivial choices hijack your attention, you uncover something startling. The freedom you've been chasing was never in the next option. It was in the power to walk away from 99 of them without looking back. Social media has turned authenticity into a performance. We polish our lives into highlight reels while endlessly consuming the curated perfection of others. It's a paradox the Stoics would have recognized immediately. Marcus Aurelius warned, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think." Yet how many of our daily scrolls would pass that test? Every minute spent envying filtered vacations or crafting witty captions is time borrowed from the raw, unedited life waiting beyond the screen. The ancient practice of prosouch attention as a discipline cuts through this illusion. Picture this: you wake up and instinctively reach for your phone. Before your thumb even hits the first app, pause. Ask yourself not "what did I miss?" but "what do I intend to find?" That split-second gap is where Stoic awareness lives. Epictetus nailed it. If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along. Every autoplay video, every algorithmic rabbit hole is a silent abdication of attention you'll never get back. Modern research reveals something startling. The average user checks their phone 58 times a day, with nearly half those checks lasting less than 30 seconds. This isn't curiosity, it's neurological hijacking. The Stoic remedy: treat social media like a tool, not a compass. Scroll with the same intentionality you'd bring to a library. Follow accounts that fortify your principles, not your insecurities. When Marcus wrote, "Stop letting yourself be distracted by the noise of other people's opinions," he might as well have been describing Twitter threads. Here's your challenge. For 1 week, transform your usage from passive consumption to active choice. Before opening any app, state your purpose aloud. "I'm checking messages from my team," or "I'm sharing this article with a friend." When the timer hits 5 minutes, close it. Notice what happens when you stop feeding the attention economy with your unresolved boredom or anxiety. You'll discover something revolutionary. The most interesting version of your life isn't the one you post about. It's the one you're too present in to document. Because here's the truth no algorithm wants you to realize. Every minute spent performing your life for strangers is a minute stolen from living it. The Stoics didn't need followers to validate their existence. They had something far more powerful: uninterrupted ownership of their attention. And in a world where focus is the new currency, that might be the ultimate rebellion. The courage of conviction history remembers tyrants, but it honors those who dared to whisper truth when lies were law. Take Thrasea, the Roman senator who refused to applaud Nero's atrocities. While his colleagues bowed, he walked out of the theater during one of the emperor's vulgar performances. A small act, maybe, but in that silence roared a defiance that cost him his life. Nero later ordered his execution, not because Thracia led a rebellion, but because his mere existence proved compliance wasn't mandatory. Stoic courage isn't about grand gestures. It's the quiet resolve to say, this far, no further, whether you're facing an emperor or an office bully. Epictetus, who knew tyranny firsthand, framed it bluntly. If you've decided something is right, speak as if the whole universe were listening, even if your voice shakes. That's the rub. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear write your lines. Now fast forward to modern whistleblowers, those who risk careers to expose fraud, abuse, or environmental crimes. They're not Stoic scholars, but they channel the same principle. Truth spoken clearly is a weapon no system can fully disarm. The stakes vary. You won't face crucifixion for challenging your boss's unethical demand, but the mechanism is identical. Every time you swallow your words to keep peace, you rehearse submission. Here's where it gets personal. Recall a moment you bit back an objection to avoid rocking the boat. Maybe it was laughing at an offensive joke to fit in, or withholding feedback to dodge conflict. Now ask, what muscle atrophies each time I do this? Not just your voice, your self-trust. The Stoics knew this erosion was more dangerous than any external punishment. Thracia's final act, calmly slicing his veins in his garden, dictating a letter about life's fleeting nature while blood soaked the soil. Dramatic, absolutely, but his real power lay in the 1,000 small no's that preceded it. You don't need to bleed to prove your spine. Start where you are. The next time a conversation demands uncomfortable truth, measure the cost of silence. Not just to the world, to who you become in the hush, because conformity isn't broken in one heroic stand. It's worn down daily like water shaping stone, one unwavering "I disagree" at a time. Today's challenge: where's one spot in your life where courage looks less like a lion's roar and more like showing up, voice unshaken, for what's right? The myth of more. We've been sold a lie, that wealth is something you accumulate, a number climbing in an account, a garage full of status symbols. But 2,000 years ago, a man chained in Emperor Nero's palace saw right through this illusion. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who turned down luxury to sleep on hard floors, dropped this bombshell. Luxury weakens both body and soul. It makes us need more when we ought to need less. He wasn't preaching poverty. He was pointing to a radical truth. Real abundance isn't about what you own, but what you no longer need. Here's where modern hustle culture crashes into Stoic wisdom. Society tells you success looks like a gold watch, a McMansion, a closet full of labels you barely wear. The Stoics sliced through that noise with a razor-sharp distinction: preferred indifference versus true goods. Preferred indifference: money, comfort, reputation, things that can help but don't define a good life. True goods: virtue, integrity, self-mastery, qualities no market crash can take from you. Think of it like this: a luxury car might be nice, preferred indifferent, but your ability to stay calm in traffic, true good, that's priceless. Fast forward to today's voluntary simplicity, movements, minimalists living happily in tiny homes, digital nomads trading corner offices for freedom, even billionaires like Warren Buffett still in his modest Omaha house. They're not rejecting comfort, they're rejecting dependency on it. Epictetus, born a slave, put it bluntly: wealth isn't having great possessions, it's having few wants. That's the litmus test. The less you require to feel secure, the richer you actually are. So here's your challenge tonight: define wealth on your own terms. Grab a blank page and answer this: what's the least I could have and still feel alive? Maybe it's a laptop and Wi-Fi to create, a backpack and a train ticket to explore. Or just quiet mornings with people who truly see you. The Stoics knew something we forget: the things that genuinely nourish us rarely come with price tags. True freedom begins the moment you stop confusing having more with being more. because here's the irony, the world will try to sell you water while you're drowning. But the real rebels, they're the ones who learn to float. The mental firewall against blind acceptance. We live in an age where information moves faster than our ability to process it. Headlines scream for our attention, tweets demand instant reactions, and viral narratives spread like wildfire. But the Stoics devised a mental tool sharper than any modern fact-checker, the Discipline of Assent. Epictetus, who taught philosophy while chained to a Roman column, laid down the rule: don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say, hold on, let me see who you are and what you represent. This isn't ancient skepticism, it's psychological armor. Every time you pause before retweeting outrage, question a trending statistic, or resist the pull of a moral panic, you're exercising what the Stoics called proherses, the power to choose how you engage with the world's noise. Modern research calls this cognitive reframing, but the principle remains unchanged. Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space, your sovereignty. Think of your mind as a courtroom. Most people let every headline, opinion, or viral take waltz straight onto the bench of their beliefs without cross-examination. The Stoic practice: treat every incoming idea like a witness under oath. When a news story triggers anger, ask, what evidence supports this? Who benefits from my reaction? When social media amplifies fear, probe, is this threat real or manufactured for clicks? Epictetus warned, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Here's where it gets practical. Pick one assumption your community treats as gospel, maybe hustle culture is the only path to success, or political polarization is inevitable. For the next week, interrogate it like a Stoic. Seek out primary sources. Talk to someone who disagrees respectfully. Notice how often what everyone knows crumbles under scrutiny. Because the most revolutionary act in a world of influencers and algorithms isn't rejecting all ideas, it's refusing to let them squat in your mind rent-free. The Discipline of Assent isn't about cynicism, it's about clarity, and in an era drowning in misinformation, that might be the ultimate act of self-defense. The company you keep. There's a quiet revolution hiding in the way we choose our friends. In a world where networking often means collecting contacts like trading cards, the Stoics proposed something radical: friendship not as a transaction but as a mirror. Seneca put it bluntly, friendship always benefits, love sometimes injures. He wasn't talking about shallow alliances built on mutual advantage. True friendship to the Stoics was a forge where iron sharpens iron even when sparks fly. Think about your inner circle. How many of those relationships exist because they're comfortable rather than challenging? The colleague who laughs at every joke to stay in your good graces. The old friend who nods along to your complaints but never pushes you to grow. Contrast that with the rare person who risks your temporary displeasure to tell you an uncomfortable truth. That's the Stoic litmus test. Does this friendship make you more yourself or just more liked? Modern research backs this up. Psychologists find we unconsciously adopt the habits, values, and even speech patterns of those closest to us, for better or worse. Epictetus saw this centuries ago. You become what you give your attention to. Surround yourself with people who chase status, and soon you'll measure your worth in likes and titles. Choose companions who value integrity over image, and their standards become yours by osmosis. Seneca mourned how rare true friendship was in Rome's political scheming. A crowd of friends surrounds you only while fortune smiles. Sound familiar? Social media metrics masquerade as connection, but real bonds aren't measured in comments or congratulatory DMs. They're proven in silence, when someone sits with your failures as intently as your successes, or calls you out when you're betraying your own principles. Here's your challenge: audit one relationship this week. not the obviously toxic ones. Those are easy to spot. Examine the pleasant alliance that subtly nudges you toward conformity. The friend who rolls their eyes when you mention self-improvement. The co-worker who mocks your ambitions as too serious. Ask, does this person help me become who I aspire to be or who I've outgrown? You don't need dramatic confrontations. Sometimes simply pulling back your energy reveals everything, because the Stoics knew what we forget. You are the average of the 5 people you let closest to your mind. Choose them like your life depends on it. In many ways it does. The silent rebellion, there's an unspoken war being waged on your attention, not just by notifications and algorithms, but by the very expectation that you must always be on, always reacting, always filling the air with words. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the ancient world's noisiest empire, fought this battle daily. Before dawn, while Rome slept, he'd steal moments of pure silence. No advisors, no petitions, just the quiet discipline of his own thoughts. His secret weapon, a simple habit. When you wake in the morning, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. Not to judge them, but to ground himself before the storm. That silence wasn't passive, it was preparation. An emperor's rebellion against the chaos of his own reign. Fast forward to today, where solitude feels almost radical. We've confused connectivity with presence, mistaking a full inbox for a full life. But here's the Stoic twist. Silence isn't empty space, it's the canvas where clarity emerges. Modern research confirms what Marcus knew. Uninterrupted quiet boosts creativity, lowers stress, and sharpens decision-making. Yet we treat it like a luxury, squeezing it between podcasts and playlists. Digital Sabbaths, intentional breaks from screens, aren't just trendy detoxes. They're acts of defiance against a world that profits from your distraction. Seneca saw this coming. Be silent as much as you can, talk only when you must, and then say only what's necessary. Imagine applying that filter to your next conversation. How many words do we waste performing, posturing, or filling voids that don't need filling? The modern parallel isn't monastic vows, it's the power of a pause. The 3 seconds before answering a text, the deep breath before venting frustration, the walk where you leave the earbuds at home. Here's your challenge for one day: practice the Stoic art of necessary speech. Speak only when it serves a purpose, to connect, to clarify, to uplift. Notice how often the words you swallow weren't yours to begin with. Gossip, complaints, automatic, fine when someone asks how you are. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the space where you rediscover your own voice. Because in a world addicted to hot takes and knee-jerk reactions, the quietest person in the room often holds the most power. Dressing with intention. When your clothes become a philosophy, there's an unspoken power in what we wear, not as costumes to impress, but as quiet declarations of what we refuse to worship. 2,000 years ago, Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who turned down palaces to lecture in threadbare robes, confronted his students with a piercing question. Why should we feel ashamed to dress plainly when the body itself is merely the soul's temporary garment? He wasn't advocating for drabness, but for something far more radical: clothing as conscious choice, not cultural compulsion. Fast forward to today's fast fashion frenzy, where the average person buys 60% more garments than they did 2 decades ago, yet feels perpetually underdressed. The modern minimalist wardrobe movement, think capsule closets, quality over quantity, isn't just about saving closet space. It's a quiet revolt against the idea that self-worth should be stitched to labels and trends. When Steve Jobs wore his signature black turtleneck or Einstein recycled identical suits, they weren't rejecting style, they were reclaiming mental real estate. As Seneca put it, it's not poverty to have little, it's poverty to crave more. But here's where Stoic fashion gets provocative. It's not about the number of hangers in your closet. It's about the intention behind each one. Musonius argued that clothing should serve three functions: protection, modesty, and dignity, not performative wealth or status signaling. Contrast that with today's influencer hauls, where outfits are worn once for the gram before vanishing into landfills. The environmental toll is staggering, but the psychological cost runs deeper. Every impulse buy whispers that you're incomplete as you are. So here's a challenge straight from ancient Athens. Open your wardrobe today and ask of each piece, does this reflect my values or just fill a void I've been told I have? Maybe it's the expensive logo tee bought to impress strangers, or the heels you tolerate despite hating. Notice what happens when you dress not for applause but for alignment. There's a reason the Stoics prized simplicity, not as deprivation but as liberation from the exhausting theater of appearances, because true style isn't about what covers your body. It's about what reveals your character. The resistance that shapes you. Not every no is a rejection, sometimes it's a redirection. When the world pushes back against your choices, it isn't always a sign you're wrong. Often it's proof you're doing something worth resisting. Marcus Aurelius put it in terms even a blacksmith would understand. The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything thrown into it. That social disapproval you fear, it's not an obstacle, it's the forge where your resolve gets tempered. History's most original thinkers weren't celebrated in their time. Galileo faced house arrest for daring to say the earth moved. Van Gogh sold one painting in his lifetime. The common thread, their breakthroughs demanded a willingness to withstand the friction of being misunderstood. Social resistance isn't just inevitable when you break from the herd, it's necessary. Like a muscle, integrity grows stronger under tension. Here's the Stoic shift. Instead of dreading disapproval, start interpreting it as biofeedback. That coworker who scoffs at your unconventional approach, a signal you're diverging from groupthink. The relative who questions your career pivot, evidence you're prioritizing purpose over permission slips. Marcus didn't just tolerate opposition, he used it. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your turn to apply this. Identify one area where you've been hesitating because of potential pushback. Maybe it's launching a passion project despite skeptical friends, or dressing in a way that feels authentic but breaks norms. Now, mentally thank your future critics in advance. Their resistance isn't blocking your path. It's confirming you're on the right one, because gold doesn't resent the fire, it needs it to shine. Stoic parenting. Raising the unshakable child. The modern playground is crowded with parenting philosophies. Helicopter parents hovering over every scrape, tiger moms drilling for perfection, free-range advocates preaching limitless autonomy. But 2,000 years ago, in a world without parenting blogs or Instagram comparisons, the Stoics proposed something radical: stop preparing the path for children. Prepare children for the path. Epictetus, who taught students in the shadow of Roman excess, laid down the rule: don't insist your children must never stumble, insist they learn how to rise. This wasn't about harshness, it was about honesty. While today's parents often rush to remove every obstacle, the Stoics argued that struggle isn't the enemy, it's the curriculum. Imagine teaching a child to ride a bike by never letting go of the seat. They might never fall, but they'll also never truly ride. The modern obsession with shielding children from discomfort has a hidden cost. We're raising generations fluent in external validation but illiterate in self-trust. Think of the teen who deletes a post with fewer likes, or the college student paralyzed by a professor's critique. Contrast that with the Stoic alternative, a child who understands that their worth isn't decided by applause or criticism, but by the integrity of their effort. Marcus Aurelius learned this early, writing in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." How much healthier would our kids be if they internalized that before their first algorithm fed insecurity? Here's where Stoic parenting gets practical. Pick one societal pressure you've inadvertently absorbed, maybe the belief that children need constant entertainment, or that their schedules must overflow with activities to keep up. Now ask, does this truly serve their growth or just soothe my own fears of falling behind? The ancient remedy was simple but profound. Let children face manageable challenges while your support is still their safety net. A toddler frustrated by a puzzle isn't suffering, they're learning resilience. A teen navigating social friction isn't abandoned, they're building emotional armor. The goal isn't to raise Stoic children in the colloquial sense, emotionless or hardened. It's to nurture Stoic children in the philosophical sense, clear-eyed, adaptable, and anchored by something deeper than trends. Because the greatest gift you can give a child isn't a world without storms. It's the confidence that they can sail through any weather. So here's a question to carry into bedtime routines and school drop-offs. What's one pressure I can stop projecting onto my child, not to make my life easier, but to make theirs more truly their own? The answer might just plant the seeds of an unshakable adulthood. The quiet liberation of enough. We've built entire economies on a dangerous myth that more always means better, that growth has no limits, that happiness lies just beyond the next purchase. But the Stoics punctured this illusion centuries ago with a radical alternative, the philosophy of enough. Seneca, who watched Rome's elite drown in wealth yet starve for meaning, delivered the knockout blow. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. That single sentence dismantles the entire engine of consumer culture. Poverty isn't measured in possessions, but in perpetual hunger. Modern movements are catching up. From tiny house dwellers rejecting mortgage slavery to digital minimalists trading smartphones for simplicity, people are discovering what the Stoics knew. There's fierce freedom in drawing your own finish line. Voluntary downsizing isn't about deprivation, it's about recalibrating your relationship with desire. When you stop chasing the horizon, you suddenly notice the ground beneath your feet is already solid. Here's where it gets personal. That itch for upgrades, the new car smell, the latest gadget isn't organic. It's carefully cultivated. Ancient Rome had its chariot races and silk imports. We have influencer hauls and planned obsolescence. The mechanism hasn't changed, only the packaging. Epictetus saw through it. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The fewer hooks you give the world to pull you by, the more space you create for what actually sustains you. Tonight, try this Stoic audit. Pick one arena where more has been your default setting, maybe your wardrobe bursting with unworn clothes, your streaming subscriptions piling up unused, or even your calendar choked with obligations. Now ask, what would enough look like here? Not the bare minimum, but the right amount where adding more wouldn't deepen your joy, only your clutter. That threshold is different for everyone, but finding yours is revolutionary. Because here's the secret no advertiser wants you to know. Contentment isn't something you find at the end of accumulating. It's what flourishes when you stop conflating having with being. The moment you define enough, you break the cycle of chasing shadows and discover something startling. You were never running toward happiness. You were running from the freedom of standing still. The work that doesn't feel like work, somewhere between the relentless hustle culture and the quiet desperation of quiet quitting. There's a third path, one the Stoics charted long before burnout became a buzzword. Picture two stonemasons in ancient Rome. One grumbles about the heat and his aching back. The other, covered in the same dust, works with steady focus. When asked what they're doing, the first snaps, breaking rocks. The second smiles, building a cathedral. That difference isn't about the labor, it's about the locus of meaning. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who made philosophy practical, shattered class prejudices with one bold claim: all work is honorable if done with excellence and purpose. In a society where elites sneered at manual labor, he insisted that digging ditches with integrity was nobler than governing poorly. Fast forward to today's performative productivity, the endless meetings that could have been emails, the resume padding projects no one needs, the late-night emails sent just to signal dedication. The Stoic question cuts through the noise: is this work serving a purpose or just serving an image? Modern research reveals a paradox: the more we equate busyness with worth, the less fulfilled we become. A study in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who view their jobs as callings, not just careers or paychecks, report deeper satisfaction even when their work is objectively harder. That's the Stoic edge. Meaningful labor isn't measured in hours logged, but in alignment with your nature. A farmer thriving in quiet fields embodies Stoic virtue as fully as a CEO steering a company, if both are acting from their core values. Here's where we reclaim agency. Start with a simple audit. List your daily tasks, then label each as performance for show or purpose for substance. That spreadsheet you tweak obsessively to impress managers' performance. The mentorship you give new colleagues despite it being off the books purpose. The goal isn't to judge yourself, but to notice, because awareness is the first step toward realignment. Musonius gave us the ultimate litmus test. Ask not what your work earns you, but what it makes of you. Tonight, reflect on one small change to bridge the gap between your labor and your values. Maybe it's volunteering skills where they're genuinely needed, or simply doing your current job with more presence. Because the real rebellion isn't rejecting work, it's refusing to let it hollow you out. When you stop mistaking motion for meaning, you discover something revolutionary. The best work doesn't drain you. It dignifies you. The clock that sharpens your life. There's a practice so counterintuitive, it feels like holding a blade to your own throat to remind yourself you're alive. The Stoics called it Memento Mori, Latin for remember you must die. Far from morbid fixation, this was their ultimate wake-up call. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire while staring down his own fragility, scribbled in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That's the paradox. Confronting mortality isn't about obsessing over the end. It's about electrifying the present. Modern psychology backs this ancient tool. Studies show that when people visualize their limited time, whether through near-death experiences or simple reflection, their priorities crystallize overnight. Trivial grudges dissolve, courage surges. The things they've been postponing until someday suddenly demand action. Steve Jobs famously said death was life's best invention because it strips away all that's unimportant. That's the Stoic secret. Mortality isn't a threat, it's the whetstone that sharpens your choices. Here's where it gets practical. Picture your funeral. Not to dwell on loss, but to spotlight what matters. Who's standing there? What are they remembering about you? The late nights sacrificed for a promotion no one will recall. Or the laughter you created, the quiet kindnesses, the moments you chose authenticity over approval. Epictetus framed it bluntly: death smiles at us all. All we can do is smile back. That smile isn't resignation, it's liberation. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start living like you mean it. So try this tonight. Write 2 sentences. If I died tomorrow, I'd regret. And if I died tomorrow, I'd be proud. The gap between those answers isn't a condemnation. It's a roadmap. Maybe it's the creative project you've delayed, the rift you've avoided mending, or simply the habit of scrolling when you could be savoring. The urgency of Memento Mori doesn't demand grand gestures, just the courage to stop waiting for permission to live. Because here's what the Stoics understood that most miss: the awareness of death isn't a shadow trailing you. It's the sunlight that makes every hour vivid. When you stop fearing the end, you finally begin. Stoic environmentalism. When less becomes the world's more. Long before sustainability became a buzzword, the Stoics were quietly practicing what we now call eco-conscious living, not out of trend but principle. Marcus Aurelius gazed at the stars and wrote, "What benefits the hive benefits the bee." That wasn't just poetry, it was a blueprint for seeing humanity as part of nature's web, not its master. While modern corporations greenwash for profit, the ancient Stoics lived lightly by design, not because they couldn't afford excess, but because they understood the true cost of unchecked desire. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught under a colonnade in Athens, needing nothing more than shade and open air to share wisdom. His student Cleans hauled water by night to support his studies, embodying a truth we've forgotten. Simplicity isn't sacrifice, it's alignment. Fast forward to today's climate crisis, and the Stoic approach gains startling relevance. Every time we bypass fast fashion for repaired garments, or choose local produce over shrink-wrapped imports, we're not just reducing waste, we're exercising prohesis, the Stoic art of deliberate choice. Seneca nailed the paradox of consumption. It's not that we have so little time, but that we waste so much of it on what doesn't matter. Swap time for resources, and you've diagnosed modern environmental collapse. The average Westerner generates over 4 pounds of trash daily, not from necessity, but from conformity to systems that equate disposability with convenience. Here's where Stoic environmentalism diverges from modern activism. It's not about guilt or grand gestures, but daily micro-resistances. A reusable water bottle isn't just eco-friendly, it's a quiet revolt against the lie that you need endless plastic to stay hydrated. The challenge: pick one area where convenience has overruled conscience. Maybe it's the daily takeout containers piling up, or the impulse buys destined for landfills. For the next week, approach that habit with Stoic interrogation. Does this serve nature's balance or just my momentary craving for ease? You won't save the planet alone, but you'll reclaim something more vital, the knowledge that your choices echo beyond yourself. Because the Stoics were right, we're not drops in the ocean, we're the ocean in drops. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. When you sip coffee from a mug instead of a disposable cup, you're not just reducing waste. You're honoring Marcus's vision. What's bad for the hive is bad for the bee. And in that small act, you become both. The tightrope walk of true freedom. There's a dangerous illusion masquerading as liberation today. The belief that freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, with no boundaries or breaks. Social media sells it, fast fashion feeds it, the entire attention economy thrives on it. But here's the Stoic twist no algorithm will advertise. Unrestrained indulgence isn't freedom, it's slavery wearing a party hat. Epictetus, who knew real chains as a former slave, sliced through the fantasy. No person is free who is not master of themselves. Think about that for a second. The person glued to their phone craving likes isn't free, they're shackled to dopamine hits. The chronic overspender chasing retail therapy isn't liberated, they're mortgaging their future to fleeting impulses. True freedom, the Stoics argued, isn't about having no restraints. It's about choosing your restraints with ruthless intentionality. Modern culture confuses license with liberty. A toddler screaming for candy has license, an adult delaying dessert to savor it fully has freedom. The difference: discipline, that daily 5 a.m. run isn't punishment, it's the price of owning your health. The saved dollar isn't deprivation, it's the key to future choices. Every time you govern your impulses instead of letting them govern you, you're not limiting yourself. You're expanding your sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world, yet his journals obsess over self-command. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. His imperial chariot could go anywhere, but his real power came from the ability to stop, to pause before anger, to resist distraction, to align action with principle. Contrast that with today's freedom of infinite scrolling, where thumbs move faster than thoughts. Here's where it gets practical. Pick one area where your desires currently steer you more than your decisions do. Maybe it's reflexive online shopping, the siren call of snooze buttons, or saying yes to events that drain you. Now flip the script, design a small but deliberate constraint. Set a cooling-off period before purchases. Leave your phone outside the bedroom. Practice one intentional no, because here's the secret Epictetus uncovered in chains that most free people miss. The ultimate cage isn't around your body. It's in the untamed corners of your mind, and the key, it's not in breaking locks, it's in forging them voluntarily with the precision of a blacksmith shaping his own liberation. The leader who serves rather than shines. We've been conditioned to think of great leaders as fiery orators, magnetic personalities, figures who command attention the moment they enter a room. But what if true authority has nothing to do with charisma? Marcus Aurelius, who steered Rome through wars and plagues without ever craving applause, left a clue in his journals. You could spend your entire life walking on your toes and still never please everyone. That's the Stoic secret to leadership, ruling yourself first, others second. History's most enduring leaders rarely fit the charismatic mold. Think of George Washington, who surrendered power twice, after winning the Revolutionary War and again after his presidency, not because he lacked ambition, but because he valued stability over spectacle. Or Angela Merkel, whose quiet, data-driven leadership outlasted flashier counterparts. The common thread, servant leadership, the radical idea that influence grows when you focus on lifting others rather than polishing your own image. Epictetus, who trained Rome's elite, exposed the flaw in performative authority. If you want to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid. That's the litmus test. Would you still lead if no one noticed? The manager mentoring employees behind closed doors, the parent modeling patience rather than demanding obedience. These are the real architects of lasting change. Charisma burns bright but fast. Integrity builds slowly and lasts for generations. Here's where it turns inward. Consider your own sphere, whether you're managing a team, mentoring a sibling, or simply navigating friendships. How often do you default to crowd-pleasing rather than truth-telling? Leadership isn't about titles, it's about the moments you choose hard truths over easy approval. Marcus distilled it to one question: what's the virtuous way to act here, not the impressive way? Try applying that today. In your next decision, whether delegating a task or navigating a conflict, ask not, how will this make me look? But how will this help them grow? The paradox: the less you seek credit, the more your influence expands, because real authority doesn't come from shining brighter than others. It comes from helping others find their own light. The mirror before sleep. How nightly reflection sharpens your days. Most of us end our days the same way, collapsing into bed, numbly scrolling until our eyelids droop, letting one blurry day bleed into the next. But what if just 10 minutes could transform that cycle into something far more powerful? The Stoics practiced a ritual they called the evening review, and Seneca described it with surgical precision. When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and retrace my actions. This wasn't self-criticism, it was consciousness cultivation, a way to close each day not with exhaustion but with intentionality. Here's the modern twist: reflection isn't about tallying wins and losses like some corporate spreadsheet. It's about noticing the subtle gaps between who you aspire to be and how you actually showed up. Did you speak with patience when irritated today, or let stress dictate your tone? Did that extra hour online nourish you or just numb you? The goal isn't judgment, it's awareness, the kind that slowly rewires autopilot living into deliberate action. Neuroscience backs this ancient practice. Studies on resting state reflection show that pausing to process daily experiences strengthens emotional regulation and problem-solving skills. Think of it as mental digestion. Without it, experiences pile up like undigested meals, leaving you sluggish and unclear. Seneca's version was simple but profound. What evils did you avoid today? What virtues did you cultivate? Two questions that cut through the noise of busyness to reveal what actually mattered. Tonight, try this stripped-down version. Set a 3-minute timer and ask: 1. When did I feel most aligned with my principles today? 2. Where did I compromise them without realizing it? No need for elaborate journaling. Just listen for the honest whisper beneath the day's chatter. The magic of this practice isn't in grand revelations, it's in the cumulative effect of small course corrections. Like a sailor adjusting sails nightly, you'll find yourself gradually steering toward calmer waters, because here's what the Stoics knew: a life examined isn't some philosophical luxury. It's how we stop sleepwalking through our own existence, one conscious evening at a time. The unshakable core, where true revolutions begin. All this time, we've been sold a lie that rebellion requires loud protests or dramatic gestures. But the Stoics whisper a quieter, more subversive truth. The most radical act isn't changing the world, it's refusing to let the world change you. Think of Marcus Aurelius penning his journals amid the chaos of empire, or Epictetus teaching philosophy while chained to a pillar. Their power didn't come from overthrowing systems. It came from something far more dangerous: an inner sovereignty no external force could touch. Stoicism isn't about rejecting society. It's about engaging with it eyes wide open, principles unshaken. Every tool we've explored, Amor Fati, Premeditatio Malorum, the Discipline of Assent, they're not just philosophical concepts. They're blueprints for building an inner citadel strong enough to withstand the storms of conformity. Epictetus, who knew true oppression, framed it with razor clarity: no one is free who isn't master of themselves. That's the heartbeat of this entire journey. Freedom isn't found in louder outrage or trendier dissent. It's forged in the quiet moments, when you choose integrity over applause, when your actions align with your values even if no one's watching. Now comes the real question: what will you do with these tools? Not in some distant future, but today. Pick one practice, whether it's Seneca's evening reflection to audit your compromises, or Musonius's embrace of voluntary discomfort to expose manufactured desires. Start small, but start now. The revolution isn't coming. It's already here, waiting in the space between stimulus and response, in the next choice only you can make. So let's turn theory into action. Drop a comment below. Which Stoic practice will you wield first to cultivate your unshakable core? Because the most powerful movements don't begin with crowds. They begin with individuals like you, choosing to stand firm in their own truth. The world may never notice your quiet rebellion, but you will, and that changes